In their quest to highlight and document voices from ancestors of all South Africans, Heritage Publishers have added 4 new titles in their acclaimed Our Story series, SHAKA, DINGISWAYO, The Rebellion of LANGALIBALELE and MATIWANE'S AMANGWANE. The series is an effort by the publisher to tell the earliest recorded stories of the many that are nearly forgotten, even by those living in the provinces in which these events occurred. To tell us more about their work and the new titles they've just released, I'm joined via Zoom by Terrence Ball, and he is a publisher. Mr. Ball, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sabiba. Thank you very much indeed for having me, and to your viewers.
It's an absolute pleasure. Let's start with how this series of Our Story came to being and why it was important for Heritage Publishers to document our country's history in such a fashion.
Well, it arose about 7 or 8 years ago now in the small rural village of Vuwani, where I was sitting with 3 friends, 2 Chitsonga speakers, one of Amashangana heritage, the other Vatsonga, and a Chivenda-speaking friend. And they were asking me about the history of the first contact between their ancestors and the role of the Portuguese in those encounters. And during our discussion, all of them are involved in education. We agreed that something needed to be done to create a greater awareness of the history and culture of all of the people of Southern Africa. It's my contention that if we are serious about social cohesion, we should know a little bit of each other's languages and something of our past.
And now, Terrence, this Heritage series was first published in 2015, and I believe that it has grown from 14 to 23 titles to date, with more to be printed, yeah? Take us through how you managed to grow it into what it has become now.
Well, because I was speaking to an Amashangana and a Vatsonga, I felt the best place to start was how the Amashangana and certain Vatsonga ended up in Limpopo. And so we started with the Battle of Mhlatuzi River. That was Wide Kalanga, Shwashangan, Kanumalo, Zwanginaba Kajele of the AMANGWANE. And obviously Shaka and Mzlikazi Kamashobani headed up essentially what was the Abakam Tetwa, although a lot of people call it the Amazulu as well. They were also involved. And so we started with that story. Then we decided to follow the life of Shoshangan and his son Muzila, his grandson Ngugunyani, Mzlikazi Kamashobani, and then obviously other people that were affected by that battle. So the Basotho. And yes, we now have 23 titles, and the 4 new titles take that to 27, with a further 6 to be published in the next few months.
And your latest printed titles, SHAKA, DINGISWAYO, The Rebellion of LANGALIBALELE and MATIWANE'S AMANGWANE, do unpack for us what these books document.
Well, obviously it documents the life, I suppose, and events in what we today call KwaZulu-Natal. MATIWANE'S and Ngwane were the second AMANGWANE people to be displaced from KZN. And moved towards Lesotho, around Lesotho into the Eastern Cape, and then back up into KwaZulu-Natal. They followed in the footsteps of the Hlubi under Mpangazita. So we're looking at the different AMANGWANE clans' histories in that area, but we don't focus solely on KZN.
Now, the books are written primarily in English. So what are the reasons behind this, as opposed to writing them in their original and indigenous languages?
Well, the reason for this was, again, that we felt that everybody needed access to the history and culture of other people. I think what one finds amongst South Africans, even today, I mean, years ago, before Muvango, if I went to the Eastern Cape and said, they would wonder, what language I was speaking. So English, I believe, is the best language for all people to engage with and understand the culture. However, obviously, we would look at versioning these into our indigenous languages if there was interest in that.
Now, take us through the process of putting these books together, Terrence. I mean, the research that goes into capturing the true facts about our history.
Well, yes, we've discovered, in fact, a series of fantastic writings. I'll go into that because that's really important. Initially, obviously, we did rely on the oral tradition, on people that we knew, the elderly people telling us about the history. But we will use whatever resources are out there to ensure that we record a history which is as accurate as possible and as respectful of our ancestors as possible. That for us is critical. During this research, we recently came across about 891 writings in 7 indigenous languages, written by indigenous languages, mother tongue speakers between 1930 and 1950. And it is absolutely extraordinary what is being opened up here. And clearly these documents have fed into some of our publications already, and we will be publishing them and making them available separately.
Well, this series has been purchased, I understand, and catalogued by the Library of Congress in Washington. Do tell us more about that, as well as the South African provinces that have formally called for book submissions in the recent past.
Well, unfortunately, relatively few provinces have called for book submissions, especially of supplementary materials. One has to go back about 10 years to 2010, when the CAPS curriculum was introduced. A decision was taken by DBE that they would call for the submissions of core textbooks and teachers' guides only, and it would be up to the provinces to call for the submission of supplementary materials. And only 2 provinces have called for supplementary materials, the Northwest and the Eastern Cape, and in one of the cases they suspended the purchase of supplementary materials. So at the moment, it's very difficult to get the materials into school, but I'm absolutely confident that if we do a good job, and with history becoming compulsory very soon at FET level, grade 10 and upwards, these materials will be seen as almost essential resources.
And some of these books have been out for quite a while now. So what kind of role would you say that they've been playing in highlighting the history and culture of South Africa?
Well, I'm pleased to say that we've got very positive feedback from most of the people who've read the books. And I think it just gives everybody a much clearer idea of their own past and also how their history interrelates to the history of others. A brief example of that is in these writings that we produce. There was a story by a Balabedu on the Rain Queen and the history of the Balabedu. And he talks about a group of Vavenda having been displaced by someone they refer to as Siwawa, who was Jau Albasini, Chihuahua. And in some writings in Xitsonga, the same incident is referred to, where the author says he was born in the reign of Chihuahua, which means he was born before 1888. And he served in Chihuahua's army. And he talks about the raid they made on the Balabedu.
All right, Terrence, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that.
Okay. That was Terrence Ball. He's a publisher at Heritage Publishers, and we're just in conversation about their books that collect and retell South Africa's history and heritage through their Our Stories series. It is 14 minutes to 8.